Welcome to Recross the Paths. My name is Cade, and today I am joined by a trio of brand new friends. I'm here with Kyle. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you.
I'm here with Conor. Hello, Conor.
Hello.
And Sam.
Happy to be here. What's going on?
It's so exciting to hang out with a bunch of people at once. I'm used to a lot of one-to-one sit-downs here, but this is a treat for me. This is the team responsible for the Chicago Cube, and I'm really thrilled to get to dive into that today. So I'm going to pass this to each of you as we dive in. Why Cube? Why is Cube a thing that you care about? Or like, how did you get there in your own journey? Let's start with Conor, if you want to kick us off here.
We all kind of bonded over weird limited stuff. Sam and I used to work at a store together. Kyle used to play at that store. And Kyle and I bonded over like Winston chaos drafting. So we were already pretty like degenerate drafters from the start. And then Sam and I did a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cube stuff because you can cube in more than just Magic the Gathering.
That's very true.
100%, yeah.
And then after the first CubeCon, when we were kind of driving back, we were just like, this is the greatest event ever. We need to like get a cube together that's worthy of being in this event. And that's kind of how the ball started rolling for the Chicago Cube. Just like a decades-long friendship that just became a seamless transition into a design team.
That's awesome. So Sam, did he steal all of your thunder there?
All of my thunder? No. I actually have a slightly different review. So for me, it was working at the store. I was a notorious critic of pre-releases. I had done a number of pre-releases, a number of midnight pre-releases, and was very much of I'm done. I've matured past the point of pre-release drafting. And we at the store we always did two-headed giant sealed pre-release, and by a considerable margin, the absolute reapers of that format were the Kyle and Conor duo, the end bosses, I think. And they were also, we had a previous cube group that was playing. So these two were showing up every set, dominating a pre-release, and then they were drafting all the time. And that's an intriguing team to want to get to know. And then obviously we all become friends at that time, and the rest is history, as Conor said. But I was a constructed player for a very long time, and then realized that limited is not only fun, but it makes you good at Magic. And I was enthralled to kind of be a part of it, and then eventually get to CubeCon 1 and then start this project off.
That's very cool. And I like that idea. Limited makes you good at Magic.
Absolutely.
No shade to constructed players, but
Really?
You should draft every now and then. Kyle, what about you? How did you find your way into all this?
I don't know. So I guess just kind of add to that story is that between meeting and kind of learning that we all like drafting weird formats, we did have a separate cube and an older cube group, and we used to draft weekly, just kind of like a classic legacy cube. We built it. I think I finished it up right when Modern Masters 1 dropped. That was like a good way to get a cube started. That was like Modern Masters 1 and From the Vault 20 came out at the same time, and that just kind of made a cube real quick. And then we just drafted every week for a long time with the group, and COVID kind of put an end to that. And then, like Conor said, we went to CubeCon. We've been doing this for so long. Let's put our name in the ring or whatever.
It really was the pedigree kind of set by CubeCon 1 of, like, there were obviously issues with CubeCon 1, but in general, it was an event that was like no other Magic event anyone would play us. Like, we have a bunch of GPs appearance, SEGs, stuff like that. Nothing was quite like CubeCon in the best way. It was so fun. And after we did it, I think literally, Kate, you've obviously been to CubeCon, as we're walking down the hallway, like still in the hall, but walking past the other booths, right? Well, we have to build a cube. There's no... We are getting a cube in. It's the only option. And like on the drive back from Aston to Chicago, we start brainstorming just like the very broad ideas of what this should look like ideally. And now we get here, and it was really spurred on by how great of an event CubeCon was and is for the most part.
I wish we had recorded that car ride on the way home, because that was like our first design meeting. And like where we made the initial outline and we made the initial game plan of like what we wanted and what we wanted to focus on. And here we are.
And that would have been a really cool piece of history too, right? To be able to go back and be like, hey, remember when
we had all these terrible ideas.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, you could go back to it and like Remember when we said that Fabled Mirror Breaker and Layla were really good balanced cube cards? That was so great. It's like, no. We were wrong from the get-go, but then we figured it out.
To commiserate, I had a Lelia in my cube for far too long also. It went with the theme, right? You know, it matched.
It always does.
That's what I said that 1,000 times, you know.
It's a fun card.
It's a fun card.
So was the cube you had before the Chicago cube, was that also a team project, or was that something the group just kind of participated in?
It was mostly something that I had put together. I was very open to the group, saying, hey, we would like to see this or do this, but it was very kind of just free form, swap out some cards. Someone said blue was too good, so we'll cut that card, whatever. It wasn't much to it. And I know, we were always listening to each other's ideas, but it was mostly just a solo project.
And it should be said, in regards to like any of cube design, like I think the three of us are relatively amicable when it comes to just discussing the broad concepts of Magic and actual just design philosophy. So even when the cube was like not a very concerted 3-person project, which it was, it's very different than any of the design that we hear from even people in our community, but others as well. Even when it wasn't that, everyone was willing to hear a new idea. I think that's what makes the cube community so great, is that it's just a lot of people also just looking to learn. And I imagine that is a really good building ground to being able to be good designers, is you just have to be able to listen to what other people are saying, even if it is nonsense at times.
Absolutely. Well, before we dive into too many details about the process of designing this cube and maybe some of the decisions you made, can you give us the elevator pitch for the Chicago cube? What should players expect when they approach the cube and sit down at the table?
So the Chicago cube is a cube that is designed around graveyard, land, and artifact synergies. There is a what we call a lighthouse in 10 different 3-color combinations that kind of will guide you to what those color combinations to typically be doing. You don't have to play the lighthouses, but they're good little signposts, good little guide for players that haven't played the cube for the first time or don't have a ton of experience. You can see one of the 3-color cards, be like, oh, this one does artifact stuff. This one does land stuff. I know that if I take these cards and I take land stuff, my deck is probably going to be pretty sweet. And that is the idea that we kind of came into the cube trying to build. Something that was interesting, that you've seen before, but maybe with cards that you haven't played with yet. Feldor Retreat, for example, not a card that is in a bunch of cubes, but that card wins the game by itself if you don't remove it. And so we want to just kind of build a cube with cool cards that fit those themes.
I'm charmed by the lighthouse idea. That was one of the first things that stuck out to me in reviewing the project here. Was that part of, you said that was something early on. Was that part of like the initial car ride discussion, or was that something that evolved over time?
I think that was day one.
Yeah, I think one of the very first things we said is that we kind of wanted to do 3 colors, maybe make a signpost for each one, and just kind of see if we could make a cohesive design from there. And everything did kind of ultimately answer back to those lighthouses. And I think that was kind of the first thing we said we wanted to do. The name Lighthouse didn't come up until later, but the concept existed right away.
Yeah, the lighthouse came up later. We liked the idea of, we initially made it as, or like very quickly reconciled to the fact of a legendary permanent as the card. Because originally they're all 10 creatures now, but they weren't. There was an enchantment, a legendary enchantment there for a minute.
Which one was that?
It was a Son of Creation and Teamer.
Yes.
We tried.
It was wild.
So hard.
The good, probably the first 18 months of the cube was everything is kind of okay. Son of Creation needs to work. It wasn't as much of a want, like we need it to work, and then we eventually found something that was a little bit more synergistic. Like, oh, this is easier. Like, this just makes more sense. But the idea of that you can have these signposts where if you read the card, you should be able to reasonably deduce what those color combinations are trying to do, not only in a 3-color sense, but also in separate 2-color senses. Because the general philosophy of the cube in terms of deck design is not 3-color, it's usually 2-color splash a third. And so the whole idea is that if you look at a card, like the most basic one is Corvold, right? Corvold being the Jund colored dragon sacrifice permanents do a thing. This card is saying that in any of those 3-color combinations, you are trying to put permanents on the battlefield and sacrifice them. And you see that actually trickles down into a lot of the 2-color cards There are red-black cards that are sacrificing permanents. Orcish Lumberjack sacrifice permanents inside of red-green. And then in green-black, there's infinite cards like, Grist and things like that. And so we are trying to use the 3-color cards to isolate 2-color synergies that then spread out across the cube. The idea that your pack one, pick one is very difficult is common because everything works with everything. We want their deck building decisions to be developed. We want your sideboard to matter. And you have to draft as not a 24 card deck with 16 card or whatever, 45 cards total sitting around. You have to have a 45 card pile and then utilize that as best you can into more than just a 24 card deck because everything is so synergistic. And so the signposts were a really good way to try to get people to go down general paths without making it a commander cube style of cube, where it's like you have this one creature, do the thing the creature says. It's more broad than that.
Yeah, do you think that points players towards like potential decision paralysis since everything is synergistic in that way?
Our needing to set round timers would attest to that, yes.
I'm not sure during the draft that's been a problem, though. There's questions
Agree.
about too many game pieces creating long games, and that's a separate conversation. But I think actually it's interesting because I think it's a really good question, and I'm almost surprised that hasn't been something we've noticed because it seems like a fair conclusion, but I don't know. Maybe you two understand why that hasn't been happening, but I don't think that has been a thing.
One of the good things about our local community that may have helped us in this endeavor of avoiding this problem is that people will see like a pack of 15 cards and there'll be 4 that they see of like, okay, these are the 4 cards I'm isolating. But you know what? I played artifact stuff last week. I want to play land stuff this week. So I'm going to take the one land of these 4 that are land cards. And then that's the direction they decide to go. Maybe they change, maybe they don't. But that's one of the really cool things too is I really like cube when you can go into a cube and be like, you know what? I want to do this. Can I do this? And I feel like that's what our cube really shines. Do you want to do artifact stuff? Do you want to do land stuff? You can do sacrifice stuff. Like we have the gambit.
Does that speak to like your personal preferences, like as a team, or is that something that kind of speaks to the community that you're building for? Like, are you putting in the stuff that you, Connor, enjoy, for example, or is it like, I know my friends are going to be more into this other stuff?
I think we built the cube with stuff that we wanted first, with the idea that if we build a really cool experience that we enjoy, we can get others to enjoy that experience in the same or in a similar way. And then with their feedback, it can become kind of what you were saying of we're building for ourselves, but we're also building for you, the community, which is kind of what I think it's been now, where we kind of build with us and them in mind.
Well, if I can add on to that, this is kind of maybe a little bit departure, but when we make swaps, we'll make 20, 30 cards, maybe sometimes more each time. And this could be upwards of every month. And the cube definitely always maintains its identity when we do that. But we can, because of how frequently we swap them out and make those changes. Yeah, like we added Uro back in the other time, and we know it's broken. We know it doesn't belong there, but sometimes people want to play with it. And it was fun to be able to do that. So there is kind of just the way that we have organized it, I guess, has allowed us to really take the community's desires into consideration on a week-to-week basis, which is pretty fun.
Well, it sounds like you get to play it pretty regularly, right? If not weekly, like a pretty regular time to get it to the table.
We used to play it every week, and now we don't, only because we have so many people and so many cubes in our group. You got it, which is great. It's wonderful. We fire 2 cubes a week, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, I did want to speak on that. The difference in design philosophy has definitely been a change in not only just planning for us as designers and then CubeCon, but we have a group of anywhere from a minimum of 8 to upwards of 20 people every week who want to play Cube. And on top of that, they have tons of cubes in between them. Like we have a schedule of rotating cubes that we go through. So we were playing the Chicago Cube a lot, but now I have a bunch of other cubes that are not only fun just to play new different cubes, but also very well designed. It should be said that one of the things that Kyle has been a huge proponent of is we're no longer just the Chicago Cube lowercase community. We are the Chicago lowercase cube uppercase community. We are a community of people who are all really good designers. And on top of that, crazy good Magic players.
It's really annoying.
It is annoying. Came in 3-0 cube.
It's really frustrating. Yeah, it's very frustrating when you show up with your own cube. We have every card memorized, and then someone goes, "Well, yeah, I'm just gonna completely dust you," and it's not close. And we have really good designers and really good Magic players all actively participating in the community. And that was one of the main goals. Was Kyle and Conor mentioned this old cube group that we had, where we were getting like the cube was like could fit up to like 12 people in it, and we were getting close at like 10, 11. Again, now we wanted to bring that community back. We wanted to bring community back into Chicago for that reason. And we have soared past where we were. And so our design philosophy is influenced very much in part by there are people that we want to impress. You know, instead of doing something for ourselves, we don't want to make a bad product. We want to do well and do right by the people who are pushing us, because they are also incredibly good designers. We have 3 cubes from Chicago at CubeCon this year. You know, it's wild to see the growth that we've had over this short period of time.
To piggyback off what Sam said, when we started doing this again and started the Chicago Cube and started building back up the community, you know, we were 6 to 8 people for like a solid year and just slowly building it up. And it's so awesome to think of where we started with 6 to 8 people. Now we have 20 on a pretty weekly basis and multiple cubes in the biggest cube event of the year. Like, that feels so great for me as just like a community organizer. I'm sure Kyle and Sam feel pretty similarly, of just like that growth is awesome to see.
Yeah, it's a testament to that consistent work, right? I imagine you just show up every week, you just keep doing it, and eventually over time people know that there's a place to play cube.
We don't have to get too much into that, but we ran a league once, and you just got points for, you know, getting wins, and the people who top 8'd that league were the people who showed up the most weeks. And one of our cube group members, he said something that I just use in my day-to-day life now, which is the meta was showing up. And I just think that's a really good line.
That's powerful. I like that. That's really
show up. Absolutely, just show up. It's a good life lesson.
Well, I did want to ask, as a group, I know a lot of people approach design individually. You know, this is my project kind of for me, or I'm going to spend the hours on Scryfaller and the spreadsheet. But I wanted to explore with you all, what does it look like to work on a project like this as a team? Like, how do you collaboratively work on a project like this?
That was an adventure.
Yeah.
We've definitely gotten better at that. Very, very just sort of quantifiably better at that. It used to be frustrating sometimes, if we're being completely honest. I think there was a time where all 3 of us didn't necessarily have the same end goal in mind. And so it was really difficult when we were trying to pull each other in different directions, thinking we were going in the same direction. And we've gotten much better at sort of understanding what it is we're trying to talk about, why we would be suggesting a card, you know, all these things. And that's, that's kind of like the overview. But yeah, that itself has been an adventure and like a whole learning process.
What do you think changed there? Do you think you had to like spell it out, basically?
Patience. Just have some patience.
Definitely patience, yeah. One thing that I think was the biggest thing that kind of helped was, for a while there, we've kind of felt like every change that we made, every week that we showed up with a new list, like it was some sort of like carved in stone, like put our stamp on it. This is a perfect product. And so we all had very strong opinions about whether or not this card can make it in, or we could show up next week with this card. Eventually we realized, if you think this is going to work and I'm not sure, let's try it, you know, and that alleviated a lot of sort of like disagreements on what would happen, was just realizing it's very fluid. I think that was a big part of it.
One of the nice things for us being friends also for as long as we've had, it's made that patience and the work through process when we disagree easier. We heard a lot when we first started doing this project, too many cooks in the kitchen. I was at a Q panel at like MagicCon Vegas where Justin Parnell, not to name names, openly, he was asked the question, can you design a cube with multiple people? And he said, no, too many cooks. It would never work. You would hate each other by the end of it. And for me, that was motivation of like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to work through these disagreements we have. We're going to figure it out.
And I do think it's a testament to the product. You know, they released the stats from CubeCon 2024, and we were in the top 5 most requested cube to just try to get into the draft of people who were like ranking them through Hedron Network. And it's a testament that we can make a good product. I personally pulled both of Kyle and Connor's design and gained philosophy mind to a very high regard. And I think it's a mutual level of respect that goes, even if I don't necessarily agree with it now, maybe I'm missing something. A little bit of humility goes a long way in that regard. But the days of us going to the movies and then on the car ride back, me and Kyle getting into a screaming match over a card are so far removed because there isn't a I'm right and you're wrong. It's what environment do you see this working in? What environment do you see this not working in? How often does that actually come up? And the process was a lot of Kyle having a really good mindset for the flow of the cube, and Connor kind of being that person you described who's going to be going through Scryfall and finding those cards. And if we're being perfectly honest, I was going through it, adding cards I thought were broken, and then pushing it over and over again. Most if you look at like the cards in the cube that have been cut solely on power level, pretty much with the exclusion of Uro and Flage, I was the main proponent behind those cards, getting them in. And there's like, it's not like, oh, that one card. No, there's like 8 or 9 cards that have been cut solely on power level where I was like, this would be great. And it's those kind of 3 mindsets all working collaboratively that have led us to have a pretty balanced product that is good for new players, better for experienced players, and all around just it's a fun time.
We've also all been right and all been wrong about stuff in this cube, and that's the important thing to remember. Sometimes you're just going to be wrong, and sometimes the things that you don't expect to be good turn out to be some of the sweetest cards in the cube. Like, we all, I think, like the card collector's vault, but man, like, that card's been amazing.
Yeah, just take
That's
it.
been everything we've ever wanted the cube to be. And you just never know when that's going to happen. And we all have examples of picking cards that, like, yeah, maybe the baubles would be fun. And then turns out the baubles are great. And we should have had them in the whole time.
I tried to argue that Feldar Retreat was like a draft rare. That was like wildly incorrect. Yeah.
It is a rare that you should draft, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Expert analysis, finally.
Well, I love, Sam, as you were describing how each person is contributing maybe a slightly different lens on a shared goal. Do you think of each person as having kind of a role in the process, or does everybody wear like all the hats at different moments?
I would say now we're definitely more aligned as kind of all wearing the same hats, or all under one hat, where we have a similar goal, as Kyle said, having a similar end goal in mind. We all are kind of focused on that. During the initial building of the process, it is without question that those kind of roles I described were kind of big picture design philosophy was Kyle, individual card philosophy was Connor, and I was kind of pushing the limits. Like, how do we keep this fun? How do we keep people playing with cards that they enjoy? And kind of like taking the middle route there, where I want the philosophy to work and I want these kind of unknown cards to work, but at some point we need to cast some powerful spells if we want people to play this. And I think those 3 roles, particularly in the initial design process, started at odds with each other and became much more balanced and cohesive. And that's when we actually started to get real work done. I think you can look at the second CubeCon, the first one we got in, and you can look at that list and go, oh man, we missed it on a bunch of points. And then we get to the one after that, and we missed that on a couple points. And now we're at this next one. And the practice keeps getting better and better. It's not like there's any dwindling interest in the cube. We keep working on it. We keep pushing ourselves to do better on it. And I can say we're going to keep doing that up until Chicago Cube 2, which is on the way. But
Wow.
talk about it later.
The listeners can't see this, but everyone's dead serious face of like, no, for real, this is.
Well, we've been saying that for a minute. We we do have a list, but
we know what we want it to be, generally speaking.
So, at the risk of sounding like a job interview, how do you all manage when disagreements come up? I know we heard a hypothetical about maybe driving back from the movies, but like, When an idea comes,
Hypothetical?
Yeah,
hypothetical.
that's
Right.
hypothetical.
Yeah, that never happened. Yeah.
You're right.
Dune was great, if you ask me.
That was actually Godzilla 0.
Oh, those guys. Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
maybe.
So, like I said before, though, one of the best ways to like solve arguments or disagreements these days is just realizing we can just sort of prove it or get a better feel for it by just putting the card in, taking the card out, whatever it is. If we have like disagreements on like big picture stuff, like maybe we want to be swapping a lighthouse, that pretty much just tends to be a long conversation and then a draft or two, and then we return to it and see if anyone's opinion's changed. I think these days we don't make big changes until everyone is kind of just on board.
In regards to I think the changing of a lighthouse, because there have been lighthouses that have changed over time. One of the things was cutting a card that we enjoyed, some of us more than others, and it led to just a disagreement on, is this card played? Is this card even drafted? Is it pulling people in a direction we want people to go, kind of with that overarching philosophy that I described with two colors? And those disagreements have led to arguing, but a lot of it gets resolved in the idea where we can just test it. We can test what we need to learn about it. We can all pay attention. At some point, no matter what you're going to do, you're going to have to sleeve up the cards and try. Like, there's only so many tinkering things that you can do without playing a game of Magic. Like, eventually you just got to shuffle up and try. And I recall when we switched the Esper Lighthouse, and I had to make a push where I basically said, I think 30 of these cards in this cube need to directly support Reanimator as an archetype all across the Esper color combination, and this is why. And I believe I made that argument for about 6 days straight, not getting replies from Kyle and Conor. I just kept...
He's not wrong.
I'll admit that's true.
Yeah, I just kept... here's another... And another thing.
Scene at 3:32 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like 6 cards, and it's, this is why this needs to work, and this is what it works with, and I'm making all this art. And eventually it was tried and found to be decently successful. We ended up rotating back very recently. The list that will be at CubeCon will not include that Reanimator list for a couple power level reasons, a couple drafted reasons, but the transition away from it was way more smoother, where everyone was way more patient. Just those two differences under the same sort of topic really kind of illustrate the growth that we've had as a unit over time.
How often do you make large scale changes like that? I do want to draw a quick note to when I got connected to you all through the Discord. Your Discord is really slick, like the opportunity to drop in as a tourist and just kind of hang out and watch how things happen.
I will say that's all Kyle.
Yeah, thank Kyle twice.
Yeah.
If you see any of the, very specifically our Cube Cobra overview page, Kyle put just infinite work into that and designed all those logos himself. They're fantastic. Really, really quite good.
Yeah, it is really very sharp. Well, one of the things I was noting is as I came in and was exploring the pages, you have this detailed blog about the changes that you make. So I was kind of wondering, how frequently does that come up, and then how do you go about that?
Less so now, because we don't do Universes Beyond sets. And so our changes are more focused around when the non-UB sets happen at this point. We try to do some sort of shakeup like in between that, kind of like to what Kyle was saying earlier about adding Uro. We tried Flage as well. Obviously that card's busted, but gotta try it sometimes.
I hear those cards are good.
Did you hear that 4 of Modern Staple was good? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think just to give you an explicit answer, we pretty much update it once now per set. If some new cards come out, and even if we don't add anything to the new set, we'll just take that opportunity to just make sure we're keeping it up to date.
Is that something like the council gets together to work on, or does Sam just send his opinions to the silent chat room?
And then we decide when to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle and I are actually in a separate call as Sam.
Yeah. No, it very much is. There's a whole private channel for us to send card images or just thoughts on where the cube is currently. And then that ends up becoming a pinned message with a bunch of edits being made to it of us taking cards in and off, out. And then we get to probably within 2 weeks after the set is released, and we can kind of see what cards are doing, where the list gets pushed. And again, as Conor stated, no Universes Beyond. That's pure design philosophy. We don't agree. We're not going to compromise. And so having a main set as our kind of standpoint for that is a good way for us to go, not only is there like a date, like, or an endpoint to where the cube needs to kind of be shaken up, but also we are giving ourselves time to test all the things that of the previous rotation and really try to iron out what we liked, what we didn't like, and all that just becomes a running catalog of stuff that we remember for the future as well.
You mentioned kind of with the previous cube cons, kind of looking back and saying, here are some things we would have liked to do differently. Do you feel like that's a goal that can be attained of like, yes, we've done it, here's the thing? Or do you think it's kind of a perpetual exercise?
I will feel like we will have done that when Mardu isn't the most played deck every time.
I don't think there's actually a point where we would ever rate that. I think that's a good point. I think there's always work to be done, but I don't see there being like a perfect list. In fact, I'm sure there's not. Like you said, maybe this week we want to try Uro. Next week we don't. There's never a finished list. I think we felt finished, quote unquote, once we had 10 lighthouses that snapped together in a tight enough way that we could just talk about. We have like we said in the beginning, with graveyards, artifacts, lands, tokens. And like once we knew everything fit within that bucket, that's when it kind of felt finished. And then we could just sort of play with what it, with the paint.
It's like a beautiful byproduct of Wizards printing so many multicolor legends, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
As the resident commander hater, I will say very thankful for the infinite amount of commanders that give us one good Grixis one ever, and we might get somewhere. But I actually,
it's never going to happen. They've been asking for 2 decades.
Yeah, 2 decades for a single good Grixis commander, and then there's still people showing up with Nekuzar. But I actually disagree. I don't think I could focus as much on the cube as much as I do if I didn't think that there was a right answer to our question. I think that right answer changes very frequently, but I felt really good last year when they did a celebrity draft of our cube at CubeCon, the cheese draft or something.
Yeah,
I don't recall.
The cheese stands alone.
The cheese stands alone, exactly. And I watched as much of it as I possibly could, and I saw Sam Black play our cube to just mythic levels, and this is amazing. This is so cool. I'm so glad. And then a day later, I caught up with Caleb D, MTG, Mr. Durward, and he said to me, "Hey, by the way, Red, Black, and Mardu's just messed up." So he's like, "Yeah, I just forced it. I didn't even see the cards. I just forced it. It was absurd." And I was like, so we have one really good example of how we just nailed it. What a great way. You look at the decks from that draft, and it's like, these are people who are incredibly skilled players. They did great work. And then another great player saying, "Yeah, I just jammed this in and crushed kids. It was crazy." And it's like, all right, so we missed. We missed a little bit.
The closest I've come to feeling like we've completed something, or that I felt like we've done a finished product, is when I saw Sam Black draft the cube at that event. That was a big deal for me, for sure, because I was a big Sam Black head when I was playing competitive Magic. I'd always try to play their decks and stuff, so that was a big deal.
Yeah, and it's really validating in a way, right? To see something you've worked on, to be able to put it out into the void and see what happens, and then to have somebody you respect like do something cool with it.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And you learn a lot from that too.
Yeah, a personal anecdote that was Cole came up to me and said, "Hey, would it be okay if we used your group's cube for this draft? It seems really interesting. Everyone's really into it. I think it's going to have a lot of good play patterns as well as commentary patterns." And I said, "Absolutely." Conor and Kyle right there were like, "Absolutely, please do." And then I walked away from the table and I called my dad. And I was like, "You won't believe this. Like, I know this means very little to you, but this is insane. This is such a wild moment for all of us, and I have to tell someone." It was so cool. And so I think there is a right answer. I think that we can get to a list where we go to CubeCon and we get generally positive feedback from people who are just going to have fun to serious professional players alike, and where we can leave there going, "We did a good job."
So Conor, I remember, I think a little bit pre-show, I remember you all mentioning a rotisserie draft that you did of this project. And I've had a lot of great experiences with rotisserie drafts. I've learned a lot about myself and my friends. Tell me about that.
So I'm actually going to pass this off to Sam because Sam was the one who, in terms of the back end and organizing and producing the rotisserie draft, he was the mastermind. And so I would like Sam to talk about this.
Yeah, in terms of just the draft itself, we ran this league, which we can highlight as well. But it basically took the idea of we were going to use a product to draft the cube in real time while still commentating. I think there's a lot to be said about rotisserie draft, whether or not you do it in kind of a long-term thing where people are drafting over the course of a league in comparison to drafting. You have all 360 cards in front of you right now. You have to do this. And the decisions that people make in real time, especially on a clock, are really interesting.
Oh, this was real time.
Like
this was a real time rotisserie draft.
Oh, it's so cool.
It was about a 90-minute draft. It was with the next 6 rounds. You pick 2 cards at a time. I believe was the correct ratio on that.
I think so.
And it was real time. So during this, I was basically running the manager side. I was communicating with the players. I was communicating with Conor and Kyle, who were commentating, and they were just commentating on what they thought the picks could be at that point in the draft, what this player may consider doing, stuff on the wheel. And a rotisserie draft that's done over a week time, you have a lot of time to look at the cube and make your picks more accurate. When you're on a buzzer like that, it is way different and it's way harder. And I can't think of any one player who said, oh, I should have done this different, or didn't say I should have done this differently. And honestly, that made for great content. It was very interesting to hear from an outside perspective what people were thinking, but also see, because then we interview all our players after the draft and say, yeah, I missed this, or no, I think I nailed this. I pivoted real hard into this lane early and it benefited me. And that we had all different reactions on the spectrum that we could hope for, and it really led to a good event. And then we streamed everything on MTGO, and it was great. It was a fun night. Obviously, the draft was on a Monday, and then a week later, also on the Monday, there was the games. Kyle and Conor could talk more about the structure of the league and then the players themselves, but this formatting that we used was a really good skill tester and just a really good event. Honestly, it was very fun to see happen.
Yeah, I guess I could add to that, which is that it was really fun kind of looking at the decks they built through a rotisserie draft and comparing them to the decks we see in these 8-player drafts and seeing if there's anything you could learn from it. And there were some decks that looked just like draft decks and some that we had never seen before. And I don't know if that's because the player, it was hard to, we only did it once, but it was really interesting as a designer to sort of just try to think through those kind of things. Like, can we learn something about our 8-player draft from this? Is this useful information? I really enjoyed that part personally. Yeah.
I mean, we are hoping to do it again at some point soon.
Yeah, none of us got to draft, and now we're all
yeah,
because we were just commentating or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. After watching it happen, was it like, oh, phew, we learned our thing and we're ready to move on? Or it was like, no, I need to get in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I need to get in there.
Yeah, well, I think all 3 of us are like, oh, we could. Oh, if you let me in there right now, I'm going to 3-0 this thing.
It was. That is one thing I think as we move towards more facilitating the cube rather than playing Magic. I think a lot of times you see people go, I'm happy just to kind of stand by, be an observer. I want to keep designing a product, and all 3 of us are let's.
We're still players, baby, at heart.
Like as much of a designer and I would say a spokesperson for the cube and other events that we have planned. There's other stuff in the works that we're going to get going, especially early next year. I'm still at the same time, I can be in the same conversation talking actual logistics or cube design, and then go, all right, team money draft, let's go, 33, but let's time to ride. And I think that's a good balance that we bring as a team where all of us want to make a good product and do right by our community, and at the same time as we're going to slam all of them.
Yeah, obviously we like cube drafting. Yeah.
Yes, we like drafting. We like playing Magic.
Yeah. And that attitude doesn't change for each other. We all I want to beat these 2 more than I want to beat anyone else who comes to these events. And I would hope that it's the same way for all 3 of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, the matches are different.
I mean, I don't get too excited about free wins, but yeah, kind of.
Oh my goodness! I need this. There's going to be the air horns going.
All due respect, I was the Kyle Reaper for like 9 months.
I wasn't talking about you.
Who has the most trophies at CubeCon, by the way? Oh wait, it's me. That's right.
I think it's Miles, right?
Yeah, it's Miles.
Is he in this call?
As a side anecdote, we had a player show up to our Chicago Cube. One of our very first members of our Chicago Cube group drafted Cube with us for the first time. Less than a year later, went to his first CubeCon and came home with 3 trophy pins.
No, 4.
4 trophy pins? Oh,
Yeah,
it was three trophy pins, 4 3-0s that weekend. Yeah.
So wild.
Yeah, it was amazing.
We've had our community go from learning Cube to top 8 in like the local Cube event, 64-person events that happened. Like we had someone top 8 the Ice Cube, which just happened, the Barbie Cube that just happened pretty recently by the Manifold guys. And so it's really cool to see our community not only grow as Cube designers, but just grow as players and go into these events and repping Chicago in a way that, makes us proud.
It is nuts to see that as players, where there was a time early on, like, those 6A players where we're just kind of cruising through them and waiting to play each other in the finals. And now just everyone is a sweat. And it's like, you show like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're so good.
No buy rounds, huh?
No buys anymore. Yeah.
One of the players, the person who came in first place in our league, I think they dropped like 3 matches over 9 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was, and then they were the one that, this is just kind of a funny story. Then when they did the rotisserie draft, that was their first time drafting the Chicago Cube in the first seed, and then met their sibling in the finals, which was crazy.
Met their twin in the finals, loses in a crazy match. Spoiler alert! For if you watch the VODs, it was sick.
But yeah, like you said, like no free wins. Yeah, we've got some really, really skilled players.
You could leave this in the podcast to all those Madison, Milwaukee players. They're all cooked.
We're showing up with the best crew this year. My gosh.
We're rolling deep.
No city, New York, Indiana, Wisconsin, no one is touching Chicago anymore. It's done. It's over.
Those are big words.
There's got to be like the fog machines, the entrance music,
Oh yeah, we got a Benny the Bull costume ready to go.
Okay, now take it seriously. We're back in. Yeah.
This is what we're here for. This is the trash talk. Oh man. Well, this has been so encouraging, like to hear not only how you guys are working together as friends and companions in this process, but like how that's building into your community, how that's making them better players, drawing people in that would otherwise maybe not be there. In an effort to try to distill that a little bit, I'm going to ask each of you if you could pick a piece of advice that you would want to share with other designers where they are in their own journey. What would you say to them? Kyle, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, I got one. I was kind of sharing this earlier anyway. So I think it's understand what your cube is. If you have a kind of complicated thing like we are doing, this 3-color lighthouse thing, I don't know. You have to find a way to define what it is that you want. I'm an architect. In architecture, they call it a partie. Just some sort of way to represent what you want. And that way you always have a way to answer your own questions for whether or not you include a card or not. And as just a side note, I think once we got there, that was precisely when we stopped arguing. It's when we all knew what that goal was because it was at least defined enough. So I think that's the point. Like, it's easier to design a cube if you know what you're designing and find a way to articulate that in a clean way.
I would say if you're a designer, you need to be receptive and open to feedback. You have to be honest about the fact that you might be wrong, and that's okay. That's part of the process, and that you might think that something is really cool, but if the 8 people playing your cube are not having any fun and telling you why they're not having any fun, to be open about that,
And they will tell you.
And they will tell you. I've had a few instances where I've talked to like other designers and I've just been like, hey, like, talk to me about this, talk to me about that. And they just like blew me off. And like, that's not how you build, in my opinion, like a good cube. Like, it takes a village, and you don't have to do everything, every piece of feedback you get, but keep your mind open to it. And I think that maybe it starts one way and ends in a spot you didn't necessarily expect.
Love it. Sam?
At this point, it's a little different, but I started this process with Kyle and Conor as very much the least amount of design experience in anything. I've played a lot of games, and I've played a ton of Magic, but I had the least amount of design experience, so I was doing a lot of catch-up on learning basic principles from along the way. And as they both were talking, I was coming with like some different words that I thought might be a good piece of advice. But really, where I'm at is kind of just like the counterpoint. Listen to your friends. There are a lot of really smart people in this community specifically. Constructive players, whatever, commander players are ridiculous.
Dang. Catching strays.
But in the cube community specifically, just the raw creativity and intelligence levels are so high in this community. It's just a lot of really smart, enthused, and passionate Magic players. Listen to your friends. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to do it all by yourself. And I guess my main piece of advice is I would encourage you to try. I am now trying to push myself to be better at design, try to put it to find what I want out of the game and out of my design, rather than just, this card's fun. You know, there's so much more than that. And I really think that I've learned that personally over the last few years. And I've learned that by working with my friends. So, you know, work with people, be receptive, and try. Push yourself to make the best product possible, because it is really rewarding. It's really rewarding when someone comes up to you and says, hey, what you did, that was awesome. And I encourage everyone to shoot for that. It's a good thing. And my friends are smart, so that's cool. It's easy to piggyback.
I like that answer.
I think it sucked, but you know.
The only part I stand on is that commander players have had. But
yeah,
okay.
you should run a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode that the views of Sam and Commander do not reflect the views of Across the Paths.
Actually, yeah. Can you please do that? And also, you know, maybe his fellow cube designers. You know, I don't know if he speaks for all of us.
If you have to cut that last thing about Commander, that's fine. But my message stands.
You know, the comedy, as soon as somebody says, you should cut this part, that's probably going to make it.
I want the episode to only be Sam saying, we should cut that.
Yeah, can we cut that?
What are you talking about? No. There's so much on the cutting floor. We can do a Patreon special episode now. Yeah.
God, look at this free value we're giving you.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
crazy.
All the value adds.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, as we're trending toward wrapping up, I get to ask one of my very favorite questions, and I'm going to pass it to each of you, which is, if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would you pick, and who would you have do the illustration?
Did you know that there are no old border negates in this entire game? And that's absurd. So that's my answer. And art by Jeremy Jarvis. Original art is fine, but that's insane.
Yeah. Terrific answer. I love that.
That's a good answer.
So I would actually choose a Universes Beyond card that I would want to be in the Chicago Cube. I would want it to be promo so that it's Universes Within, so that it's not just like the Warhammer card, but I would choose Necron Deathmark.
Yes.
I really like that card. I think that card would fit into our cube pretty well. It's on the very short list of cards that I wish we could play that it's Universes Beyond. So I would want it to be Necron Deathmark, and let's get Steve Argyle doing it. You know, he does pretty good work.
For sure. In that one's an artifact creature, as I recall, right?
Yep.
So he does some pretty cool artifacts.
Artifact creature, destroys a creature, puts good stuff in your graveyard. It just checks a lot of boxes.
Lorwyn was my first set I started in, and I think that there are a lot of cards that could just use from a little bit more, I would say, fade tuning. You know, just add some more fairies doing some tricky stuff. I think it makes it better. And I think that art style in that set in general is great, but obviously Lorwyn thought it was perfect. And the card I would pick is Lethal Scheme. I have such a storied past with that card. I worked so hard. So one of the things that I personally kind of campaigned is owning the whole Chicago Cube online, so anyone can play it any time. And I don't know if you know this, but Legal Scheme has not been coded into Magic Online until less than a year, I believe. And it had to do with it was in that the Fallout set. And so now it's online. So I've been a huge proponent of that card, and I can definitely see a couple of cool, tricky fairies doing a Lethal Scheme as an artwork. And I think that would be an excellent card with an excellent artist, Alexi Berclos, and that would be my pick.
Love it.
Also, draft Lethal Scheme. Just take that card.
Draft Lethal Scheme. Are you
Card's
good. That card is very messed up.
that card says kill a creature, draw 2 cards. What? That card is crazy.
Well, guys, this has been a joy for me, and I'm so glad we got a chance to sit down and share these moments. If folks want to follow up on the Chicago Cube, if they want to get connected, maybe check in on some of the other projects you're working on, where would be the best direction for us to point them?
So we're Chicago Cube on everything, I believe, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Blue Sky is going to be like our main social media site. Is there anything else besides and the obviously the Discord? Yeah, if you want,
Kyle's just shaking his head like, okay,
yeah,
well.
yeah. if you want an invitation to our Discord, there's a link on our Blue Sky. So just go to our Blue Sky. There will be a link where you can just join the Discord through there.
Yeah, everything is in everything. So if you go to YouTube, you can get to the Twitch and the Discord. If you go to the Cube overview, I believe you can get to the Discord as well on Cube Cobra, which for the Chicago Cube on Cube Cobra as well. Catch up with us at CubeCon. Most of us go to the Midwest local events as well. We're always around. We're very friendly. Catch up with us anywhere.
I buy and sell Magic the Gathering cards at MagicCons if you want to sell me Magic cards.
Sam, you've made it very clear that you're only friendly to people that don't play Magic in a very specific way.
Yes.
Not even going to back down from that when he's ready. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, thank you again so much for your time and for your passion here. This is a treat. Kyle, Connor, Sam, appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.